like sun always comes up on the eastern side and goes down on the western side, like water falls down from the sky and not vice versa. We all know cloud costs are growing. We probably can do nothing about it because we consume cloud from large vendors. But even those vendors sometimes give us tools that help us at least control the way we spend money in the cloud. And those tools can be simple on the surface, which they are, but their application can sometimes be quite complicated. And choosing the right tool and applying it in the right scenario is what gives you the biggest saving in the cloud. Today with me, I have our head of cloud, Stefan Denk, and we want to talk about the very, very basic things related to Microsoft Azure, which are Azure Reservations, Azure Savings Plans, and Azure Commitments, if we have time for it. And Stefan, feel free to bring any other similar tool that is on the surface that's easily accessible and potentially incorrectly used.
Yeah, thank you for the introduction, Sasha. And today, in my own comparison, we are going to explain, if I take a picture from the car world, how you can use either the automated drive mode or some manual gear shifting to drive some savings in your existing cloud workloads. Now, this is for companies who already have an established footprint in the cloud, who have a considerable workload, which will be around for a longer period of time. The advice we give to you today does not apply to you if you are just testing out the cloud and you have not yet made up your mind if you want to stay, because we are going to talk about things which will commit you to do a 1 year or even a 3-year consumption, where in some of the cases, you may be able to exit out, but in the other cases, or most of the cases, you will actually commit the money, so you will be locked in to continue using these services for some time. So caveat, what we tell you today is applicable when you have a cloud strategy for the next several years, where your workloads will remain in the cloud and they will likely grow into the cloud. It's also with a big asterisk if you are considering to maybe relocate to a different cloud or you go back to your on-prem environment. If you have any of these cases, the advice we give today will not apply to you. So just as a word of warning upfront. But if you are going on a track where you see an ongoing increase of your cloud costs because you are deploying more into the cloud, you're moving your data centers over, you are in the cloud for at least the foreseeable future, stay tuned, prick your ears. We are going to show you a way how you can get to some pretty quick savings.
So essentially, these are long-term commitment tools, at least a year. You said multiple years, but reservations are at least a year. You probably won't use them from the day one. So what you're saying makes sense. By the way, look at it from the other point of view. They're giving you these concessions with the aim for you to stay with them for a longer time. So it's not a completely free meal. On the other hand, it's a discount. So, Stefan, can you please begin with a very simple explanation? Because I believe some people watching this video will not even know what we're talking about. So, can you please explain us what is an Azure reservation, how it works, very basically, like for a 5-year-old, and then what is the saving plan, and what are the differences, and then you can take it and expand and explain further.
Yeah, I don't have a way to explain it for a 5-year-old, but I'll explain it for a young adult who already had to pay rent for once and maybe stayed in the hotel for a few nights. So there's a big difference in you actually owning your house. This would be having your IT on-prem. You bought everything, you bought all the infrastructure, and then basically over several years, you're using it until you finally need to replace it. Or maybe we stay in a car world. This is like you buy a car, you use it 5 years. After 5 years, you get yourself a new car. You again use it 5 years, and then there are some costs around it, which you all have to absorb. On the other hand, you can drive a cab. There is absolutely no commitment to the cab. It is available whenever you need it. There are some services associated with the cab, like getting you from A to B. But it's a pretty expensive way for you to get around, especially if you want to have this thing waiting for you in a driveway 24/7. In the middle of these is like a lease, and this is a comparison where Azure Reservations or savings plan come into, where you say, hey, I need a certain workload, like a certain means of transportation for 1 year or 3 years. These are the two terms which the cloud providers offer us, not just Microsoft, but also Amazon. And within this time period, you are getting your workload, so your means to execute things in their environment at a significant discount, but you have to stay around for the entire time. You can, of course, stop using it, but you'll continue paying for it.
So we'll give you a discount if you promise you're going to use it for a year. That is a reservation. That is a reservation, isn't it? So reservation is, we'll give you a discount to this virtual machine if you promise to use it for a year. It's not like even your promise, you actually committed to use it, aren't you? So you have to pay.
You'll be paying for it for a year.
Okay.
Yes. So this is like with the lease. It doesn't matter if you're using a car, if it sits in your garage idle, or if you're driving it a whole lot. So this is where the example starts to fray a little bit, because if you put 100,000 miles per year on the car, you will have to pay more for the lease. But let's just assume it is one with unlimited driving. This is how your reservations work. You tell the cloud provider, I'm going to use this workload for the next 1 year, in which case they give you about a 40% rebate, or up to 3 years, in which case they give you a 60% rebate. Now, some of the rebates vary a little bit, but these are the general terms. And this is what we want to talk about today. And I think we should quickly explain the savings plan as well, because this is the kind of new kid around the block. There it's a little different, and then we can hop right into the Azure pricing calculator to show our audience what the heck we are talking about.
I see savings plans as basically, but please correct me if I'm wrong, is I'm committing to consume specific services, and for that I get a blanket discount on everything. Just eat what you can. You have a blanket discount if you promise X. Can you give us a good example, Stefan?
Yeah, the savings plans. If you're taking a picture from everyday world, it's like buying a all-you-can-eat buffet-ish. So the thing is, it's not, you are limited in the amount you can eat, but you have the entire variety, or most of the variety of the restaurant available to pick from. So it's like with a buffet, you are buying one big plate, and then you can fill everything on this one big plate, and you can select from 30, 40, 50 different things, instead of having to buy one thing, which then is the meal which you are eating this night. This may be a good comparison. So the savings plan applies to everything under the compute section. It's for virtual machines, it's for Kubernetes, it's for premium app service plans, which are app servers, Azure premium functions, and a few other services. It doesn't apply on your disks, for example, which is another big cost item, or it doesn't apply on your log analytics, Sentinel, on your OpenAI, on all these other things, but it applies on more or less everything compute. And the beauty about the savings plan is it tries to find itself a way to apply. With the reservations, you can reserve the wrong thing. So if you are reserving a general purpose virtual machine, but you're not running any of these, you're running everything on memory optimized VMs, which are a different so-called family, you pay the reservation for the general purpose, even though you don't use it. And then you are paying the pay-as-you-go cost higher on your memory optimized VM. The savings plan, you just say, hey, I'm going to consume, for example, $50 per hour in compute, and then it'll apply itself to all eligible workloads. So even if you are changing VMs around, if you are migrating things over, if new workloads come, the savings plan will always try to apply itself, even if your system changes. With the reservations, you always have to make sure that the reservations match your actual workloads.
So with the reservations, you have to have a more or less clear plan of what you want to do.
Yes.
For 1 or 3 years ahead.
Yes.
They require planning. You don't get better discounts.
A little better. Maybe it's time that we hop over into the Azure pricing calculator, that I can show a comparison example between these two. If you can bring up my screen, please.
Yes.
So we start.
What I wanted to say is, You also said a very important bit, probably a bit too early, but I want to explain it to the audience. Is reservations, although you need a good, like almost nearly perfect plan to use them, there is a bit of flexibility. So virtual machines are grouped into so-called families, the types of virtual machines. So when you reserve inside a certain type, as long as you stay in that type, and you, for example, you kill one virtual machine and deploy another one, if it's in the same family, Azure is actually clever enough to just reapply that reservation to the new virtual machine. So you're not picking a specific machine and for a year, then you delete it, and your entire reservation is lost. It's not lost. You may still use it. There's a bit of flexibility. Yes. Whereas SAMexpert plan is everything in compute. You don't need a perfect plan.
Yes.
Fine. Let's go back to your presentation.
Yeah. So the thing that you said is very valid, and these instance series, basically every entry here on this drop-down list, and just because I cannot see myself sharing, can you confirm me the drop-down list is open? It's visible?
No, it's not for some reason.
It's not. This is probably me only sharing the screen. Let me see. No thanks. Let's do it like this. If I share my entire desktop for a second, don't really want to do that. Long story short, we will work through this one. So in this instance series, there are different entry points, and I'll just flip through a few of these.
We can see that.
Every one of these, so here a number changes from the version 5 to the version 6 series. These are two different reservations. It's the same savings plan. Now, a letter was added, the L, so a low memory version of this virtual machine. It's a new reservation, it's the same savings plan. And as you can see here, the discounts, as we are flipping through these, they stay around 50% for a 3-year savings plan and around 60% for a 3-year reservation. There are some modifications here. If we have this DC series, which so far I have seen very seldomly, the rebates are lower on both. And now we are getting to an interesting one. A little further down, let me see where we are coming to this. So if these virtual machines are being used, depending on the region where you are in, let's pick one in Europe, because I guess a number of our customers are actually in the European territory. Mm-hmm. And this is still the default virtual machine, which is coming up when you are creating new VMs, so the version 3 VMs. We are seeing here that the savings plan discount and the reservations are several percent lower. And the reason for this is that this is an outdated virtual machine series. So one of the recommendations outside of what we are going to discuss today is look for an alternative. And in our opinion, the sweetest system to bring your older virtual machines to is this one here. It's the AMD-based version 4. It has modern performance, so you'll get a performance boost on your older virtual machines you migrate over. It still has temporary storage, which is important for your older systems, which also have. You would need to buy this one separately for quite a bit of money on the newer systems. So you're kind of getting the best out of both worlds, and you can either use this D-series general purpose, which is giving you 4 gigabytes of RAM for every 2 CPUs, or you can use the memory optimized variant for this, which also exists, the E series. You're getting 8 gigabytes of RAM for every 1 vCPU. Now, what I would like to explain here is with the reservations, if you're making
Stefan,
A1.
Sorry, yes? Would you mind making it a bit larger? I don't know, Control Plus, whatever you use on Windows. Yeah, this is better, yes.
Okay, thanks for the pointer. So with a 1-year reservation, as we said, this is where you say, hey, I'm going to buy 2 CPUs in this exact instance series, you will get a 40% discount. With a 3-year reservation, it's going to be a 60% discount. And we are getting the combination of the compute cost and the Microsoft license costs shown here in the calculator. And the 60% discount is not on the license, so this stays completely unchanged no matter what selection you use. But you can see that your pay-as-you-go cost of $110 goes down to $40 odd with this 3-year reservation. the 3-year savings plan is giving you a 50% discount. So as expected, it goes down to $50 odd. Now, these two modes are something which you can apply liberally in your environment if you know that your compute is going to increase over the years to come. If you don't exactly know how long you're going to stay around, please at least take the 1-year savings plan or the 1-year reservation. You see this is already a 30% or a 40% discount. Unless you have an exceedingly high rebate from Microsoft, for example, if you signed a very large Microsoft Azure consumption commitment, you may be getting a 20-25% discount. Then this 1-year saving plan recommendation is probably not going to be very valuable because you are not getting these discounts on top of your Mac rebate. You're getting them instead of your Mac rebate. If you had a 40% Mac discount, which so far is unheard of, and you buy the savings plan, you're actually ending up paying more for this service because this will override your contracted price with the savings plan price. And if your discount from your contract is higher than this one, you actually end up paying more. But I think there are a few cases where we have such a high discount.
Interesting that Microsoft doesn't control this, which is giving you a 40% hypothetical discount on your overall contractual discount.
Yeah.
So MAC is the Microsoft Azure consumption commitment. It's a special type of agreement that's attached to your other bigger agreement with Microsoft. This is strange, and I think people should be aware of this because accidentally you could actually start paying more.
Yes.
So savings plan overrides MAC discounts. What about reservations? What do they do with the MAC discounts?
The same. So they both replace the price you have. And we actually hit this with a customer of ours. They, as a thank you for adopting E5 enterprise-wide, got a significant rebate, something like 40% or so, on a few select SKUs from Microsoft. And we bought a reservation for these SKUs, which had a 25% discount. And we wondered why all of a sudden the costs went up. And it was exactly this seen in the open, and so confirmed with our own eyes and with invoices coming from Microsoft and a ticket which we had with their billing support team. They confirmed that indeed, if you have a higher contracted pay-as-you-go contracted price is lower than your reservation price, it's still going to apply the reservation price.
Interesting. I want to rewind a little bit to the point when you said that savings plans only apply to compute and nothing else. So does it mean that there are things that you can actually reserve, but you can't apply a savings plan to?
Yes, this is the case. So if we go into to see what the savings plan apply to, and I always recommend doing a simple search and checking back with Microsoft Learn. You can also use the O3 Mini, O3 Mini High, or O4 Mini, O4 Mini High from OpenAI, for example, for reasonably good answers, but they sometimes stray a little bit from reality. So at the end of the day, it's always a good idea to check into learn.microsoft.com and figure out what the different topics are. Here's an explanation what reservations are, and then there are several guides, references, concepts, etc. And it actually shows, when we are scrolling down here, a whole lot of services which you can buy a reservation for. Now, you can, for example, buy a reservation for backup storage. You cannot, or the savings plan won't apply itself to backup storage. But again, let's figure out what the Azure savings plan does. And it already says Azure savings plan for compute, giving you an indication that's probably not covering everything. Now we landed here on the product information page from Microsoft, but there is usually also a good way to get into the documentation. And let's just open this one again. To show you the difference, what to look for, this starts with azure.microsoft.com, so this is giving you the boilerplate. This here starts with learn.microsoft.com, so we take this one here. and it will explain that the Azure savings plan apply themselves to eligible resources. There's a link to it, and it's throwing us right back here. And at the end of the day, what this one says when we are scrolling down is that we can, oh my goodness, they made the set really a little different. Okay, this is a new one for me, to be honest. So if you hop back to the Azure pricing calculator, it applies to virtual machines, it applies to premium app services, it applies to virtual machine scale sets, and it applies to Kubernetes services. So basically where you are buying a compute SKU, which is not wrapped into another service. For example, also SQL MI will not be covered by an Azure savings plan.
Mm-hmm. Silly question. Would you say that if an organization is only beginning the Azure journey, they probably shouldn't sign a massive Mac commitment, and they probably shouldn't even touch the savings plans? Or should they take a savings plan as the first step, and then slowly, as soon as they figure out what they want to do, they can start thinking about reservations and then potentially a large Mac commitment? So do you have any real, please share any real life stories that you have.
Yes, I do. And maybe you can bring us back into full screen, Sasha, because I won't be using my browser for this explanation for a bit. So if you are starting with Azure, I would be extremely cautious of your first Mac commitment. The reason for that advice is this is setting an expectation with Microsoft. Every time you renew, Microsoft will expect you to have a double-digit increase in percentage of your Mac amount. So say you believe that over the next 3 years, you're going to consume 20 million. Microsoft is going to sell you a 20 million Mac for the next 3 years. In 3 years, when your Mac ends, Microsoft will expect you to be at the level that your next Mac is going to be at least like 25 million. They will be very unhappy if your consumption lagged out and you want to sign a smaller Mac agreement. Like you want to get down from 20 million to 15 million, for example, because you didn't go into the cloud as quickly as you thought. Not even to speak about that, if you have a lot of money committed and the organization gets into a spending craze, and I think we had one of these customers, they made a very, very sizable Mac commitment, and 1.5 years in, they had only consumed a third. They should have consumed half, and they were getting like, okay, what else can we spend money on? We need to somehow get through this Mac commitment. And this is then driving a culture in your company where there's absolutely no appetite whatsoever for cost savings, because literally, if you're saving costs, you're going to lose it at the end of the Mac when your term expires and you cannot consume. And to add even one thing, so Microsoft is giving you a 1-year grace period. Say you have a 20 million Mac and you manage to consume 15 million out of that one. You have to pay the remaining 5 million on the last day of your Mac because you committed to consume 20 million within, say, a 3-year period. These 5 million, they are not lost to you. They will be credited to your Azure consumption. This means for the next 5 million in Azure consumption, you will be drawing down on this credit. Now, if you now signed a new Mac agreement, which is bigger than the one before, and you're starting with a 5 million left over from your old one into the new one, the problem is just going to be so much bigger 3 years in the future when you maybe are only halfway through your Mac and then you are not even able to consume your credits within 12 months. Now, I haven't yet been in a case where there was a multi-million-dollar amount left over at the end of this 12 months grace period. But if you read Microsoft's documentation, you just lose the money because the credits are only valid for 12 months. So the first Mac, I believe, is the biggest decision you actually take around your Azure consumption, because it does set this expectation. Microsoft will push very hard for ever bigger Macs. And if you set it too big, it will build and ingrain the wrong culture in your company, because you will be actively discouraged from saving money because you would be losing it. If you want to set a Mac at all, I would really, really set it figure out the lowest level that you can go in with your most pessimistic adoption, which still gives you a rebate from Microsoft. That would be my idea, and figure out and buy yourself another 3 years to decide what you want to do. The worst thing that can happen to you if your first Mac is too big, it's basically just gonna be a mess.
But if you go into an overage, so say you are consuming more than you promised, are you losing your discount?
No, you keep it. That's the beauty.
You keep it. So
you just are missing out on what could have been an even higher discount had you committed to even more.
What discounts are we roughly talking about? So that 40% discount is something almost unheard of. So what's the roughly, just to benchmark? Say we want to spend 100 million a year in Azure. What would be your expectations on the Mac discount?
35% if you really spend 100 million a year. I have seen everything from 5 million a year at 5% to half that at 10%. So it depends a whole lot on how you negotiate, also how your setup is, what your account team needs to do. And I think this is also a very important one to take into consideration. Sure, Microsoft is big, but depending on with whom you are dealing in your Microsoft negotiation, the account team at the end of the day is not representing all of Microsoft. If somebody different corner of the world signs a huge deal, this does not reflect on the person sitting on the other side from you on the table when you negotiate your discounts. So I've seen customers with just a few million a year consumption negotiate a 10% discount.
Here's a question. If I get only 5% discount on my Mac, but I can get 41% discount on my reservations and 31% discount, I don't remember the exact number, on my savings plans. And if savings plans cover compute, licenses can be solved with bringing your own licenses. Some things that are not covered by the savings plan can be reserved. Can we reserve disk space?
Yes, we can reserve disk space, the bigger premium disks, but also only for a 5% rebate. So it's moot.
So it's a very difficult balancing act, but I think for many scenarios, Mac doesn't make sense. Or does it?
Well, it gives you a discount on the things which you cannot get a discount on with a reservation or with a savings plan. So all your pay-as-you-go consumptions, they get this 5%, 10%, 20% discount. And the thing is, it's from a psychological point of view, it's a very big number. Even if you're just thinking about 5% on a 20 million Mac, that's $1 million. Yeah. And then Microsoft may throw in another $500,000 in some credits, in some training, in some cloud investment funding. So it may actually be a multi-million-dollar hook they are setting, but there's a reason why they are setting this hook. They know that it pays for them in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. What I'm thinking of, if I am a completely unsuspecting person from traditional procurement school, where I've always negotiated licenses and I understand how it works. I understand, okay, there are leverage points, but when I commit to my licenses, I know the counts, I know the amounts. I've played this game for 20 plus years already, for example, since enterprise agreement was introduced very long ago, 2003. And now I am entering a completely new world where, especially there are still companies that are only now moving properly to the cloud, that haven't been holding off from that move. And some of them will still sit on the fence because of the geopolitical challenges right now. It's nearly impossible to solve this riddle quickly unless you bring an expert, or you bring an expert. You have a tool that will give you that flexibility. To be honest, I wouldn't trust just data from a tool. Somebody will still need to have a look at it and interpret it. So to plan this whole combination between a Mac, savings plans, and reservations, it sounds like a college degree at least. just to make sense of that.
It's at least a very strange hobby and combination of interests in a person. So this person, if you find it in your company, or if you can hire that person, will be incredibly valuable. The savings which we have seen on a average cloud deployment, let's say you're consuming 5 million a year. There's already some bring your own license. There are already a few reservations here and there. Maybe one product team who knows that their product is going to sit around for the next 3 years, bought a small savings plan. So it's decentralized use of the savings levers we have seen. The beauty about a savings plan and reservations is this is something that you can manage very, very well centrally in a FinOps team or in an IT operations team if you have the backing from somebody higher up the food chain. So the owner who in the end pays for the Azure bill can be a senior director responsible for the cloud. Maybe in a smaller IT environment, it's even the CIO, if this is a significant percentage of their entire IT budget. With the backing of such a person and with some planning ability in your company, you can make a forecast that over your entire Azure estate, rather than just looking at a simple application or a single application, I wanted to say, you can, for example, say, hey, we are going to have 2,000 cores in a general purpose series-ish, at least over the next 3 years. Maybe it's even going to increase to 2,500. Hey, reserve 1,500 of them. Leave some buffer on pay-as-you-go and enjoy a 60% rebate on like 2/3 or 3/4 of what you know is still going to be around for some time. The reservations need you to follow the configuration drift in your system. So if people, for example, start to modernize, version 6 is now being rolled out by Microsoft. So let's say all your workloads are on version 5 VMs, you buy a reservation for this, and now your teams are gradually beginning over the next 1 and 2 years to adopt this new series because it's a little faster, it gives better storage performance, or it has a few technical upsides, which your engineers are eventually going to find out, and then we'll begin to adopt this because it's a better, faster system, which the cloud makes available to you. So you will find that there is initially a good coverage between your reservation, what you're running, and eventually it's going to drift apart. So you will have partially unused reservation. This is something where you can exchange reservations. The rule is you can hand in an entire or a partial reservation and buy a different one as long as the value of the new one you buy is the same or higher than what you are handing back. So there is some flexibility in the reservations. Let's say you buy 100 CPU cores of general purpose version 5 today for 3 years, and you realize that in 1 year that your organization has shifted to different workloads. You can actually hand back this reservation and just say, well, please credit what I've already paid for that if you did it up front towards the new reservation I buy. The new reservation simply has to be a little bit bigger, total value. But if the reservation has already been running for a year, what you can also do is you can even use this in a context where you are long-term in the cloud, but you are shrinking your entire cost because you do optimization. Because let's say you have 100 cores bought for a 3 years term and 1 year has lapsed. A third of this value has already been consumed. And since you only need to buy a new reservation, which has the same value, you can actually buy one for 70 cores, again with a 3-year period, and you get the same cost towards Microsoft. So this means you can taper down reservations. And this is a very important difference to the savings plan, because the savings plan, as Harry correctly pointed out, you pay or you commit to consume, let's say, $20 per hour for compute. And this is locked in for 3 years. If you get down to $15 compute per hour, you are simply paying $5 on unused savings plan charges.
And you can't combine them. You can't have at the same time, well, as we've seen in the calculator, a savings plan or a reservation.
Yeah, the reservation will take priority. So the way it works from the Microsoft point of view is it will first check, do I have a reservation? Then the reservation is applied and it reduces the build cost for the system to 0 because you paid for it with the reservation. All the systems which still have a build costs after the reservations are applied, they are candidates for the savings plan to go onto. And the savings plan always starts with the resources where it has the highest discount and then gradually applies itself on lower discount resources until there's no more savings plan to apply. So you can combine the two, even add some pre-purchase plans into the mix. Again, it's a bit like poker. It's easy to get into buying a few reservations and buying a savings plan, but really mastering it takes a little bit of practice and getting used to. But yeah, you can play a pretty damn good game. And we have seen savings of up to 25-30% lower total cloud bill from really playing this reservation savings plan game to perfection.
And bring your own license probably as well.
Yeah, of course.
People
And then if you
about.
think about 20 or 30% savings, multiply this in your mind with your current cloud cost. If you hire one person or even a small team, they will have an excellent ROI. The bigger your cloud bill, the bigger their ROI is going to be.
Yeah, if you're saving 6 million of a 20 million commitment just by applying those clever tricks.
Over a 3-year period, if you can get this out of one person, it's going to be one of your most productive employees. And if you allow this person to do nothing else but to really figure out that you play this reservation savings plan game to perfection, rather than asking an already very busy IT professional who has to do operations for your SAP systems and patch your systems and do priority tickets in production and 25 other things, and then do this reservation thing on the edge of his desk, yeah, guess what?
I guess the problem is how do you recognize those savings? Because when you only start and you have a baseline of fine, just off the table, off the price list, full costs, then you start playing this game with reservations and savings. You achieve, say, 30% savings in the first year, and then going to the second year, your baseline will be set to that number. Can you save more? Will the management recognize that you are still saving off the price list, or will they compare it, as they usually do, with what you've achieved in the first year? That's a very difficult game to play. Yeah. So, on the other hand, they probably understand what you're doing anyway.
So in our experience, they will be doing this, compare the second year with the first year, because they will want to know if they still need you or if you have done your duty and are no longer required. And so this is a constant communication game where you need to explain the value you are creating for the teams, for the company, for the CFO at the end of the day, because you're driving down actual money leaving the company. So you're protecting the company's bottom line, which is also a very, very good story for your senior director or for your CIO to tell. And I think this is a lesson which is very, very hard for many of the technical FinOps folks to figure out. And this is where we can help, because we have been in the business of explaining the value realization. And we are, for example, not talking about billings, we are talking about investments. We are talking about generating value. We are talking about capital reclamation or savings. The whole thing is you need to really explain the work and the impact that you are making in a way which your superiors understand and which is living in their world and in their verbiage. And this is one of the areas where we can help you even as a well-versed FinOps expert. If you find that you are not being listened to, or you're not being taken seriously, maybe have a conversation with us and we can share some of the secrets which helped us convince a CIO to take decisive action and turn a cloud from a cost problem eventually into something which he labeled as a problem solved. So very, very happy to support you in this one.
I want to bring a few comments on screen. Harry was very active. No, Sasha, that's incorrect. It's when I was explaining what a savings plan is. Yeah, Harry, you are correct. I know. First of all, I'm learning. Secondly, I'm playing dumb right now. So asking silly questions, Stefan explains them in his way. But thank you for this comment. I wasn't correct. You're absolutely right. Another one from Harry is Sentinel is not covered by a savings plan.
This is correct, but Sentinel you can buy 2 commitment types for. The first one is if you are on a multiple of 100 gigabytes per day ingestion, you can buy a capacity commitment, which says I'm going to commit to ingesting at least, let's say, 500 gigabytes per day, and you're going to get a sizable discount on your per gigabyte fee. And you can even combine this with a pre-purchase plan. So there are some ways to drive your Sentinel costs down, which are, again, a mix of this. I'm going to consume at least X, which is a little bit like your Mac discount. So your contracted price goes down. And then you can layer this with an additional, and this is an additive discount, pre-purchase plan, which acts like a reservation. Disclaimer, please check that you do not have an outstandingly high rebate on your Sentinel pay-as-you-go or these gigabyte commitment tiers. This is actually where we got burned when there was a high discount on these on a few select SKUs, and we replaced it with a pre-purchase plan at like 20% or so, and we ended up paying a higher cost at the end of the day.
I want to bring a couple comments that are a little bit off topic, but I want to respond to them. Hey guys, I'm an experienced SAM professional with more than 8 years of experience. I'm trying to add FinOps as a skill. Would like to know your views about future of FinOps. So let's not go on the tangent today. We have a session on this channel, live session on the 11th of July, which is in 9 days, where I'll be hosting Bill Talbot, an ITAM professional and an ITAM coach from the United States. And this is what we're going to be talking about exactly for a whole hour. So please come to that live. Please watch it there if somebody's interested in. We don't usually do such discussions on this channel, but Bill is an old friend of mine, and there's a very interesting event he is planning by the end of August in Knoxville, Tennessee, which will be exactly for that purpose. People will gather together to improve their ITAM skills and see, what's the future, what's the future of FinOps. So please come to that. And another question from
one short answer to what Anshul asked for. So when you are going into FinOps, it is absolutely an extension of your software asset management experience, because licensing and SaaS is one of the, in my opinion, core disciplines of FinOps, because it is one where you're actually lowering the costs. FinOps has 22 disciplines. Less than 5 are about lowering the costs, and more or less all of them are being able to intelligibly talk about the costs. In my opinion, this is the wrong way around. FinOps, from my point of view, should all be about the value that you are generating by applying what you are doing. And that means allowing a company to have a more efficient use of the cloud. Means you are paying less than you have to, or than you're currently doing. So my recommendation is go into FinOps. It enriches what you already do from SAM. You will be able to transfer a lot from your SAM knowledge into FinOps. But please don't get on the academic angle of FinOps, which is so easy to do when you are getting into the other 15. Try to focus on the disciplines where you can have tangible impact on the companies you're working with to lower their cloud bill. This is really the proof about this whole thing. Transparency in costs, visibility, knowing what you are spending the money on is all nice and good. Honestly, the thing that I care all about is that you are spending less.
Well, as Daryl Ullman, one of our colleagues, Stefan, said on this channel once, FinOps is not cost optimization. FinOps in general is not cost optimization.
It should be. But if you think
it's one of the disciplines.
Maybe nobody is.
One of the outcomes, but FinOps itself, by design, is really not cost optimization. It's a value optimization science, I would call it this way. So another question, do we want to talk about GCP? Do you have any experience with GCP, Stefan, or shall we just have a different discussion about it?
So I'm super deep in Azure. I'm pretty competent in Amazon, and I have some remote GCP experience. So I'm not really big in that, but I would go back down to first principles. And the first principles are, if you're committing to a significant amount of consumption, and the other party really wants you to make this commitment and to go in there and to act as a reference, or just to sign this deal to make their numbers by the end of the quarter or the fiscal year. So again, the core principles, why you negotiate and why people are willing to give you some concessions. You can definitely apply the same ideas about getting a discount from the other cloud providers. I have seen significant AWS discounts, even up to the point that AWS was buying out existing IT infrastructure and probably reusing them in their own cloud IT estate, to get a customer to sign a big cloud bill with them, who still had a significant data center deployment. They basically just said, how much do you want for your data centers if you put everything into our cloud? So there are many, many ways which you can negotiate, and it depends on how much does the account team need you to sign. Late in their year may be more advantageous than early in their year, because then they may need to really hit the number and give you some very good conditions. Unless they already well hit their number, then you may just be too late. So it's a bit of a cat and mouse game and waiting for the right moment. Absolutely go for it. But many of what we said also applies to GCP today. Reservations exist in GCP for sure. I'm not exactly sure if GCP has a concept like the savings plan, but much of what we discussed today applies to all of the major public clouds, because from a stratospheric view, they look very much alike.
We have a comment from Harry. I discovered last week that pre-purchase discount plan can be lower than the A price. I did the POC.
Yeah, we did the POC in production. I can confirm that this is true. It was quite hurtful.
So, Stefan, I mean, since we're coming to the end of this live stream, and we promised in our title, this is how we do it. Mm-hmm. Would you be comfortable, without obviously telling client names, to maybe describe 1, 2, 3, I mean, however much time you need, scenarios of this clever combination of various planning and reservations and savings plans and Mark played together?
So the idea is really a mix and match is probably working the best, unless you have a person dedicated to modify the reservations on like every 2 weeks or so. So again, it is doable. It's not that you need to do this every 5 minutes. I would go with a significant amount of reservations, and I would target anywhere between 60 to 90% of your compute workloads, which you can reserve and where you know that they are going to be around or they are going to grow over time. Or you can use the lapse of time and the lapse of remaining reserved value as the 3 years are counting down to reduce your workloads over time. I would get into reservations for this and use some restrictions in the services which your teams can deploy to ensure that they are deploying stuff which you reserve. And then once a week, check if there is a significant enough drift between what you have reserved and what is currently running, and adjust your reservations. This is a game which you will need to play like once a month, maybe twice a month, and you will be able to keep a coverage of like 95% or better, so that you have less than 5% of unused savings plans, which again, it's better to have a few unused savings plans VMs. A lot of people are scared about that one. Oh, I have to pay for something which I am not actually using. Not having a virtual machine reserved and paying pay-as-you-go cost at 100% is way more expensive than missing a few of the discounted down to 40% costs. So this is another important thing. Be bold and rather reserve a little bit more. It's cheaper for your company to pay within tolerance unused reservation costs than to not reserve it all. Because not reserve at all, the VM, as we saw in the example earlier, was $110. If the reservation was down to $40, just imagine you have one virtual machine reservation which you are not leveraging. Okay, you are losing $40 a month. If the VM would not be reserved in the first place, running pay-as-you-go, you lose $100 a month. So this is way more expensive. In order to capture some of the drift, we like to layer in a savings plan. At one time, we went with an all-out savings plan for a 3-year period. That worked well for like 1.5 years. And then due to ongoing optimizations, even though there was a parallel data center migration effort concluding, we eventually dipped significantly under the savings plan amount. This then led to what I described earlier, that basically all appetite for further optimizations went away, and we had to have the very difficult conversation that the savings plan is going to expire in 1.5 years from now. If we wait with all the optimizations until the very last moment, then we need to rush them all so that we then have the lower cost. So now we had for more than a year the uncomfortable period where we had to explain and explain again and explain again that yes, we are at the moment paying quite a lot of money for unused savings plan, but it's good because this then sets us up for having the lowest possible spend when the saving plan lapses. Rather than having a lot of like, oh, now we are getting under the savings plan, let's stay there. Yeah, okay. The moment that the saving plan ends, you are still at that cost level and you could be lower. But you need to stomach these maybe tens of thousands of dollars per month in unused savings plans in the period in between. So this made me shy away from large savings plans because you really, 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 really need to know how you size them, as there is just absolutely no way for you to reduce the amount of dollars per hour. You really lock this in for 3 years. You cannot do any tricks like with the reservations, where you do a partial or a full exchange for a smaller reservation by spreading a 2-year reservation over the next 3 years again. Nothing like this exists. So I would prefer reservations and use savings plans for the drift, where the reservation is not going to cut it. The savings plan is still going to catch the VM, even if the SKUs are getting changed around. So it's a version 5 this VM today, it's a version 6 VM that tomorrow, it's a version 2 completely other VM the other day. This drives you nuts when you do reservations because you're constantly chasing after it. But with the savings plan, it's easy.
Good comment from Harry. You can see it, Stefan, can't you?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. You are describing a situation which we aim to achieve. If you cannot do anything and you basically get one slot of attention of your different application teams once a year, and you need to tame 150 cats and get them all in a sack to get the savings plan agreed on, then buy a savings plan for like 70% of what you're currently spending. This is giving you like a 35% rebate-ish on all your compute workloads, because a 50%-ish savings plan rebate over 70% of your current pay-as-you-go cost is still quite a lot of money, and you're on the safe end even if the organization starts doing less in the cloud. If you let them run loose, it will always be more anyway. This is basically where you're never going to get fired. The big issue I still see is that if you let the organization bleed money on pay-as-you-go, nobody's going to lose their job over it. But if you make a significant miscalculation with a commitment, especially with a savings plan, this may bubble up and you might find yourself on the wrong end of a nasty conversation.
Interesting. Yeah, I think I can share that. I can share that sentiment, exactly. So here's the thing. You can layer multiple savings plans, can't you? Mm-hmm. So instead of, say, committing for a 3-year-long $300 hypothetical per hour savings plan, you take 3 savings plans, each $100 or 2, with different lengths. It kind of makes more sense, doesn't it?
Yeah, the thing about the 1-year savings plan is that it's half the rebate. So this is a trade-off that you need to make. On the other hand, what you can do is you can have different terms. So say I think a good way to really adopt a savings plan is when you're knowing you're, for example, in a 2-year cloud migration, you know your cost is just going to go up. Hey, buy a savings plan for your current level today. Let the migration continue for another 6 months. Add an additional savings plan on the delta, which was accrued over the next 6 months, higher consumption. Do this again, until the migration concludes. Now you've got differently termed savings plans. So your savings plan look a little bit like a project Gantt chart. And you can always just choose to let one expire at the end of the time and not renew it, or renew it at a smaller cost. But this is a longer term planning.
That's what I meant. I mean, I couldn't explain what I mean, but this is exactly what I meant. Kind of layering them, instead of committing upfront for a larger amount, kind of see where a new savings plan could fit in that and fit it in, and then fit it in, because you're not losing anything.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. You're only standing to gain. So again, like we said in the beginning with the car, manual versus automated shifting, the savings plan much works like the automated shifting because it'll find a way to apply itself as long as you have sufficient compute workload. And if you know that your organization is growing, just go for a savings plan, even dare to cover everything you have. If you understand that it's only going up, as Sasha initially said in the intro, if you're not sure if this is maybe like a bit of a hype cycle and you may be going down in cloud consumption, cover a little less with a savings plan. Maybe 50% should probably be fine, nearly all of the cases. If you want to have tight control and the highest potential rebates and even be able to leverage some of the instance size flexibility, which is maybe one where we can have another slightly smaller session one of these days, which was what Sasha initially explained, that you do not need to buy every individual VM type within one family. You can just buy 450 cores, and then Azure will do their own translation if this is going to be 2-core, 4-core, or 8-core VMs. Doesn't matter. It will simply draw from the 450 cores you bought.
Yeah, you're reserving cores. Exactly. Yeah.
It's the cores per hour. So a reservation always looks at how many cores have been running in this hour, and it's use it or lose it within that 1 hour. You could theoretically, if you buy 500 cores with a reservation, have 1,000 cores running for half an hour, and they would still all be covered by a reservation. But then you're getting into some pretty serious magic where you are turning off virtual machines after half an hour.
Yeah.
So let's leave this for a different topic. We can also talk about...
It's pretty clever, you know. So we can. I mean, I like sometimes being grumpy about Microsoft, but some of the things they do in Azure automated. Except for that problem where Mac can be overridden with reservations and savings plans, which is. By the way, I didn't know that before today. Although
it's
we're
also
colleagues.
EA rebates, huh? It's not only Macs. Imagine your EA gives you a high rebate on some service and you buy a pre-purchase plan with a lower rebate, you're going to enjoy the lower rebate.
What I'm trying to say is that some of those basic things in Azure are they actually work in a very clever way. They give you the biggest discount possible out of the combinations that you have. And what Stefan just said with reservations, so the simplest example I can give is, say you deploy the virtual machine with 16 cores, a very tiny example, 16 cores virtual machine. Then you realize you don't need it. And then you take two 8-core VMs in the same family, same type of machine, and it just automatically applies the same discount because you have reserved 16 cores.
Yes.
So, and then you kill those virtual machines, you deploy 8 2-core virtual machines, you're still getting the same discount of those virtual machines because you reserve the amount, that kind of pile of virtual cores. Even if you take a larger virtual machine, say 32-core virtual machine, 16 cores will be discounted, 16 will not. So that is applied by Azure itself. So it gives you a bit of a peace of mind.
Yeah, we definitely need to do a sequel about the scope of reservations, because you can get a reservation shared across your entire Azure tenant, which is what I highly recommend you do, because then the chances of finding something else which matches is so much better. But depending on how you set the scope, you can actually narrow it down to only apply to exactly one named virtual machine, which is something I have seen customers of mine doing, usually if they are looking at the build cost. So they may use an old Power BI report, which Microsoft created like a decade ago against the Enterprise Agreement API, and that used the build costs. Because if they tie a reservation to a single VM, they can still show the cost of the virtual machine back to the team consuming it. If they just buy 100 cores and they get applied somehow, if you only look at the build cost, it's going to be 0 for all the virtual machines. So then you lose this transparency of who actually consumed how much, and becomes a reporting nightmare. If this is a case for you, look at the amortized costs, or look at Focus, which is showing you both the build cost and the effective costs, which are the same as the amortized costs. That is giving you, again, the rebated per day cost of a virtual machine with a reservation applied. If you have more questions around this, drop it in the channel, and happy to make another session where we go into these bit more detailed, a bit more nerdy questions around reservations. but we've seen all kinds of reasons, like the hardness to show back the true cost of a VM after you bought a reservation, preventing organizations from using reservations in the first place. Let us know what kept you from buying reservations so far. Love to learn, and maybe we have a few answers for you.
Golly gosh, I didn't expect this simple conversation. I thought we were going to be online like for 20 minutes to be so long that we probably need another session. So anybody watching the recording or watching live right now, if you want us to continue this topic, just please drop us a message, a comment on LinkedIn or on YouTube in the comments. I want to know more. I want to learn about this. Don't be shy. This is free of charge. We're just sharing our knowledge. And yeah, we'll probably have another conversation on this subject.
Yes.
Thank you for being with us today. We've run out of time. We have to shut down. Yes. Amazing. Thank you.
Thank you, Sasha.
That's funny comment from Harry. Meal is ready in 5 minutes.
Yeah, so we finished on time. Very good. Looking forward to the next one.
Bon appétit.
Yeah, enjoy. See you.
Bye-bye.